Marilyn Monroe became one of, if not the most iconic celebrity to ever come out, before starring in multiple silver screen classics like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, and Some Like It Hot. Before Marilyn Monroe played the field with athlete Joe DiMaggio, writer Arthur Miller, actor Marlon Brando, and the Kennedy brothers. Before Marilyn redefined the term sex symbol. Before Marilyn Monroe's dress scene in the 7-Year Itch would be recreated time and time again. William Dafoe? That was not a good look for you. Now the blonde bombshell Marilyn Monroe that we all know and love, she was born a brunette. Her name was also Norma Jean, and she was a child of the state who was passed from foster home to foster home. She was married at the age of 16 for the first time and working at a factory before posing for some photos as a pinup model. And then she went from being a brunette to being a blonde. Marilyn had always aspired to become an actor, and throughout the early 40s she got some background roles as well as small parts, and then she was passed from studio to studio on contract. Then in 1950, all that changed when she was dubbed Hollywood's new it girl. She became the fantasy of men all over the world, but her own love life, well, it would result in 3 divorces and many a fling. Life in the spotlight ultimately became too much, and her addiction to prescription medication would cost her life at the age of just 36. What's going on, guys? My name's Michael McCrudden, and welcome to Before They Were Dead, documenting the life and career of Marilyn Monroe prior to her passing, here for you on Before They Were Dead. Now, you guys requested this video. I have done Al Capone and Elvis and Hitler in the past. Don't know why Hitler and Marilyn Monroe go together, but you know what I'm doing. So be sure to check out the other videos on this channel and let me know down below who's next. Monroe was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1st, 1926 to single mother Gladys Monroe in Los Angeles, California. Yeah, Elvis's mother also named Gladys. Kinda weird. Her mother had already left 2 children with her first husband and had her second marriage fail when Marilyn's biological father left. And well, Marilyn, she grew up with no father figure at all. Young Marilyn lived with her grandparents until she was 7, when her mother could finally afford her daughter to join her in Hollywood, where she was working in an editing department. But the reunion was cut short. In just under a year, Gladys was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and she was hospitalized. For the next 9 years, Marilyn was passed around various orphanages and foster homes, 12 in total, where she endured severe religious upbringings, sexual abuse at the age of just 8, and as a young woman, well, she would deal with her own insecurities. Her fondest memories from her childhood was her discovery of performance and coming to the realization that acting could one day be her profession. This is a decision she came to at the age of 5, when she was told playing house was essentially being that of an actor. And a lot of people can relate to that. I know I can myself. I was all the rage at the school plays, I'm just saying.
You know, you don't want to be like a big pedophile out there.
Marilyn would also frequent the movies on her own. Her foster families wanted little to do with her, so they would give her enough money for a ticket and she would spend day and night at the theater watching every film. At the age of 16, Marilyn took her destiny in her own hands and left the foster system by marrying Jim Doherty. Now Marilyn, she didn't really care for being a housewife, and then Jim, well, he was shipped out to the Pacific with the Marines in 1944, and she decided to seize this opportunity to get a job for herself, and she began working at a factory. What kind of factory, do you ask? Well, it was one that put together ammunition, because back in those days, well, the world was at war. Working with men, Marilyn's charm became quite popular around the factory, and a photographer by the name of David Conover convinced her to do a photo shoot as a pinup model. At the beginning of her modeling, Marilyn bleached her hair and straightened her curls, the first of many alterations that she would make to her appearance over the years. Marilyn loved the work. After signing with Blue Book Models in 1945, she quickly became one of their top models, appearing on 33 covers in just 1 year. If you think that's a lot, I make up to 33 videos a week. Just saying. In 1946, Marilyn was signed on to a starter contract with 20th Century Fox. The studio helped her get a divorce from Dougherty and put her in acting and singing classes with Lee Strasberg alongside Marlon Brando. This was also when she said goodbye to the name Norma Jean and hello to Marilyn Monroe. Now Marilyn's time with Fox, it was short. From there she was signed with Columbia Pictures, who decided Marilyn needed to go even blonder, creating her iconic platinum blonde look we know her for today. She starred in the movie Ladies of the Chorus, but the picture, it was a flop, and her contract, it was not renewed. Now this was back in the day where you needed to have a contract with a studio to keep your career moving forward. They were basically like your agent. So, well, she was up shit's creek. Marilyn's breakthrough came with the help of a man named Johnny Hyde. He was not only the vice president of the William Morris Agency, but also madly in love with Marilyn. By 1950, Marilyn had 2 standout roles in All About Eve and The Asphalt Jungle, which gained her critical recognition. Hyde died at the end of that year of a heart attack, but not before negotiating a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox for Marilyn. And I wonder where he got that heart attack from. Probably walked into her change room. I'm just saying. Speaking of Marilyn being, popular with the men, well, she had hooked up with Marlon Brando back when they were training together, and this would be a love affair that would continue on and off until her passing. Marlon, he spilled the beans after she left us. Professionally, Marilyn had become Hollywood's it girl, but as her popularity grew, so did the demands, which turned out to be a problem. Marilyn may have seemed like a dumb blonde on the outside, but on the inside she was an insecure perfectionist who suffered from anxiety. And since this was the early 50s, the studios fixed the problem the only way they knew how, with lots and lots of drugs. In 1953, Marilyn starred in Niagara, How to Marry a Millionaire, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, solidifying the dumb blonde damsel in distress image that Marilyn would struggle to shake for the rest of her career. In 1954, Marilyn married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, but the marriage only lasted a year and a half. Because Joe, he was extremely jealous. And when you marry a woman that men all over the world are drooling after, I can kinda understand. Let's take a look at a scene from the 7-Year Itch. Marilyn is starting to give me an itch. The sexy one. Not like the stuff I picked up back in Las Vegas. Now that scene right there, to put it into context, that would have been as controversial as success of the 7-Year Itch. Marilyn was unhappy with her career. Why? Well, there was the stereotype that she was a dumb slutty blonde. She had a public dispute then with Fox over her contract, and in the end, she proved herself too valuable to the studio. She won full control over her choosing of future projects. Marilyn also began a public affair with playwright Arthur Miller. Just so you understand how crazy that was to everyone, it would be like, yeah, I don't see that happening. Although I should make a Before They Were Famous on those two people. Personal struggles with miscarriages and other health issues, it began to affect her work. In 1958, Marilyn starred in Some Like It Hot, but her perfectionism, her anxiety, combined with her heavy drug use, it created a disastrous shoot with legendary results. See that line? That took her over 40 takes to get. Regardless, this movie is still voted one of the best comedies of all time, but it seems that concept wasn't all that far from the truth. Things just kept going downhill from there. Miller and Monroe, they divorced, and the last movie he wrote for her, The Misfits, it was a failure. She took a year off acting in 1961, and in that time her health deteriorated even further. She had a gallbladder removed and was briefly hospitalized for depression, but in 1962 things briefly began to look up. Marilyn was healthy enough to star in Something's Got to Give, and she was definitely having a fling with JFK. I mean, you don't sing a man happy birthday like that if you don't want to get into his pants. Unfortunately, this bright spot in her life, it was the calm before the storm. Marilyn's behavior on the set of Something's Got to Give had her fired and sued by the studio. And on August 5th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home due to an overdose of several medications in what was deemed a probable suicide. But there are still many questions and conspiracies surrounding her death. I'm going out on a limb here, but JFK, he shouldn't have touched the forbidden fruit. And she was probably blowing up his DMs while he was at the White House, getting nothing done. Marilyn was buried in her favorite dress in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, and Hugh Hefner, he decided to buy the land right next to her. And Joe DiMaggio, that ex-husband, he would send roses to her grave every week for over 20 years. How sweet. Now, many conspiracy theories surround Marilyn's death to this day, but whether she was murdered by the government, perhaps her studio, or whatever other possibilities, Kennedys, the only truth is that the day she died, the light of one of the brightest stars in Hollywood went out. And she was totally my type of gal. And for the rest of the story, the rest of the story lives on in her work and her legacy. This is Before They Were Dead. My name is Michael McCredden, and I do all sorts of celebrity bios on here. When you guys request them, that's when I go and get them done. So be sure to let me know down below who you want to hear about next. Like I said, we've done Hitler, and we've done Al Capone, and Elvis, and Kurt Cobain, and Rob Ford. Yeah. So let us know down below who you want to see next on Before They're Famous, After They're Famous, and Before They're Dead. See you guys in another video.